Yo, what's up guys? Medieval here, and today I'm bringing you my personal tier list for the current state of the game in Summoner's War Rush. Now, some of you might disagree with me. Some of you might agree with me. I'm fine with either. I enjoy these conversations because feedback is always evolving and there's different situations and scenarios and this, that, and the third. But I have reasons for placing units where I place them. Again, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think is a better placement for certain units if you think they should be elsewhere on the list. For example, Lucian, who's down here in early game, when I should really put him in steaming hot doo-doo, but I'm being a little bit modest with him. I'm being fair and giving him a chance. Because he's not that bad. He's not Lapis or Meihao Wang bad, but he's definitely not great. So that's why he's placed where he's placed. And everybody else, if you've taken a look, you probably have a relative understanding of why I placed them there. Maybe some confuse you or surprise you, like Vanessa up here in top choices. And, Ramagos and Prilia. I'll go over some of them, not all of them. I'll try to keep the video short. But going over them tier by tier, staple units, you have your golden 6. These guys, when you get to the point where you have 6 units in your formation, this will be the crux of your team. This is the top DPS, it's the top buffs, it's the best synergy. It just does too much and it carries you so far as opposed to the rest of the roster. Lima and Sabrina are self-explanatory. High amounts of damage, really good. Buff utility like the blind and Sabrina's double hit rate up. Then you've got Cassandra for the crit rate buff to everybody, not just range allies. Melissa's going to be that attack amplify. Gian for attack speed. And then Artemil for damage resistance down to enemies. And you can see why all of them together just make a huge difference in terms of your DPS output and your utility overall. For your top choices, we've got units like Grogan and Charlotte. Grogan is another top DPS unit that petrifies, which is a form of crowd control. He also will apply a crush rate up buff for ranged allies, which is pretty solid. You've got Charlotte, who's there mainly for the cooldown reduction on her ranged allies. And then you have Rena and Vanessa, that are both extremely useful for different reasons. Vanessa's going to be the tank as well as a attack damage buff up to melee allies. Rena's going to be the attack buff for ranged allies. So now you're catering to both ends of the spectrum since your team is going to be a mix between melee and ranged, especially in the current meta. With Interchangeable, you've got units like Elucia and Tessarian. These are your dot units. Most players are going to be using Elucia over Tessarian because Tessarian only really shines at Awaken 7. Before that, you could probably switch him, but I don't recommend it. Elucia will likely be more consistent because Tessarian really needs his Awakens to perform as good as he's meant to. Then you've got Delphoy, who's really just an extra type of crowd control. She applies a sleep and a crush damage up buff to ranged allies for I think 2 seconds or so. Kali, self-explanatory, crit, attack, defense break, debuffer. This is where I might get flack, or some people may agree with me. She's better than QD. QD being Kitian Dashang. She's 100% better. Jug might slap me for this. I'll happily take a hit from him. Kali is better, and I say that for a few reasons. The biggest reason, defense break is not that valuable of a debuff right now. Defense as a stat is kind of bad. It's not really that valuable to focus on, and in terms of increasing the damage that you do, it'll help, sure, but nowhere near as much as Artemil's damage reduction, resistance down. So for those reasons, And for the simple fact that Callie just dishes out way more damage, and she's a ranged unit, meaning that she'll survive in the back when QD inevitably dies in the front. She's just better and more consistent. Saris is going to be your early to mid game blind option if you do not have Lima. You can use them together. I don't recommend it because Lima just replaces her entirely. But if you're lacking DPS, that is why she's interchangeable. She's a really solid damage option as well as having that crit blind for 2 seconds. Ariel, I have him as interchangeable when, honest to God, I really think he deserves to be in early game more than anything. I think all tanks should be early game because just they're not good. They fall off after stage, say, 3000, when you're going to use melee units as your tanks because they have the same exact stats, if not better stats and better kit utility than these tanks do. Now, Ariel has a really awesome awaken ability that gives allies a shield based on his HP, but it's really not that great after a certain point. You're going to want more damage than survivability, and a lot of your other buffs and debuffs will give you better survivability than just, you know, EHP. So I have him in interchangeable. I'm being modest with this guy. I really don't think he should be interchangeable, but a lot of people are going to use tanks, especially free to play, pushing all the way to 6700. So through your journey, he's definitely a really solid frontline. And is another DPS unit. She's really there for the multi-hit, which is going to benefit from Sabrina's buff and Melissa's Amplify buff pretty generously. Shiva and Vertiheel, they're just the highest, I guess you could say, free-to-play legendaries because they're on the summoning road. You definitely want Shiva on your team. She does a lot more than Vertiheel, but Vertiheel is also really good when paired with Melissa's buff. So those two units are interchangeable for that reason, but I would even argue that the rest of them on the list, save the Ariel, are better in terms of a DPS option on your team with the staple units accounted for. For situational, there's a lot in here. I'll just try to break it down as efficiently and quickly as I can. Units like Alicia and Feng Yan are going to be mostly for PvP. Alicia is actually going to be used a lot in tower defense as well as the Rigel, and she's not going to really be used in guild boss or dragons because she can't freeze those bosses. They're both immune to CC, so Alicia is automatically irrelevant in terms of that. But where she's concerned in tower defense and PvP and TOA, really good unit. Her freeze is CC, and CC is king in that content, including dungeons if you need an extra form of CC in dungeons. You've got Feng Yan, who's going to be really good in dragons and guild boss. He's a melee unit. He buffs crit resistance to himself, which pairs very well with Chi Chi, who's also going to buff melee crit resistance, and she's really only used for dragons and guild boss for that reason. The other units that are only used for dragons and guild boss are Bernard, Vigor, Ramagos, and Prilia. Ramagos is going to reduce accuracy. Prilia is going to reduce the boss's cooldowns, or rather increase his cooldown time. So they won't use their attacks as often. There might just be one or two that get delayed, but that delay is all you need for more survivability and more damage. Accuracy is self-explanatory. The lower the accuracy of the enemy, less chance they have of hitting you, which just means more survivability. Vigor is the poor man's Feng Yan. He's also really good to pair with Feng Yan in case you need to apply crit resistance consistently. So I definitely recommend using him for that reason. Rigel's going to be great in tower defense to remove the boss's irremovable debuff, which sounds crazy, but the tenacity buff in the game can actually be removed from Rigel. that may get fixed. Come to Us might see this video, or somebody working for Come to Us might see this and say, oh shit, that shouldn't be a thing, and they might fix it. But until then, Rigel is insanely good for tower defense, and he's really good at removing some of the offensive buffs from the guild boss and the dragon boss. Otherwise, we've got units like Celestia, solid in TD if you don't have Lima. Remy's really a stage farmer. Chesoon is another one that's more of a stage farmer and a usable unit in guild boss. She's going to be very useful to help sustainability because she heals and the guild boss applies a debuff. Then we have units like QD. And the only reason why I have him even in situational is because he applies a slightly higher defense break than Kali, and that's going to be beneficial in Guild and Dragon boss. That's it. That's really it. He really has no other place. I know I'm going to get flack for giving him this much flame, but he's really not good. He's just not a damage unit. He's more of a utility unit, and even in regards to that utility, he just doesn't do as much as some of the other units like Artemil and Melissa and so on and so forth. Galleon and Ophelia are going to be very situational units. What I mean by that is they're specific to guild boss and dragons only when you've invested enough into them. If you haven't invested into them, don't even bother using them. But when you have, you unlock their full potential, and they bring quite a bit to the team. Galleon's going to bring a lot of damage. Ophelia is going to bring a lot of sustainability. But again, only if you've awakened them completely and invested to the point where their accessories are maxed out. Next, we have early game. Shannon is there as a solid armor break option. If you want to use QD over Shannon, do it. The reason why I prefer Shannon over QD is because of just better survivability between the first 2,000 stages, but eventually you're going to pivot into Kali anyways. Lucian is just not good. It's unfortunate. He has potential on paper, lots of AoE damage, but he just doesn't do enough. His Venom debuff just feels underwhelming compared to the Lucius Frostbite and Tessarian's Burn. So that's why I have him early game. Even if you have him, by that point you probably have Shiwa and Vertiheal anyway, so you're going to use them no matter what. Then Steaming Hot Doodoo. We don't even talk about these three units. Lapis is the only one that we use in one challenge mode. One. And that's Battle of the Gorge. That's the only time we use her. Otherwise, she is completely dog water. She doesn't do anything. She has no damage. Her debuff gets overridden, or excuse me, her crit rate buff gets overridden by Cassandra, who buffs everybody. Lapis only buffs melee allies. So they really need to rework her and give her a different crit attack. Mei Wang is just... we don't even talk about this guy. He just doesn't do anything. He's a very selfish unit, and even as selfish as he is, he doesn't do any damage. And then Tetra, I don't even think I've used her once because her multipliers are very enticing. They look convincing, but in reality, she just doesn't do enough. And she's supposed to be a utility unit, and she just doesn't feel like she fills any role at the moment. She's more of just a in the wind, you know, really. She's not a ranged DPS, she's not utility, she's really nothing. She's just dead space in the box, and I really hope that they fix her in the future. But that's the reason why these three are placed down here. I don't think anybody's going to argue with these as much as maybe like Lucian maybe being higher or Vanessa being lower. Again, my reasons for Vanessa being in top choices are mainly because she applies a stun, and she's a frontline, and she applies melee attack buff to your team, which is really good because you're using Melissa, Jian, and Artemil. They all do amazing damage. So that's really it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you agree with these placements. Let me know if you have questions or if you disagree. I don't mind either way. I'm completely open to different opinions, and I'm not partial to just this tier list. It's going to change over time, but as it currently stands, this is where I'm at. Again, let me know what you guys think. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content in the future, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.